Shohei Ohtani, good player, great little player, good little hitter.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think his future is, though, as a two-way player? And it's something I want to ask Matt Vasgersian about later today, LA Angels broadcaster, MLB Network, and all the rest of it, because I wonder about Shohei Ohtani and his ability to do what he's doing now for a long time and how that might affect the Giants or the Dodgers or whoever signs him next year in terms of what they want to pay him, because he's been remarkable as a starting pitcher every 6th day, as a hitter every other day. But might he get to a point where he starts to break down and he has to maybe give up one of the two? And if he gives up one of the two, it's going to be pitching, right?
You would think so, and he's already been dinged up a little bit this season. I think from what we've heard, he really doesn't want to give it up, right? He really does enjoy doing both. Conversations about, well, would he be a closer? It's either going to go a couple different ways, I think. It's going to be Shohei as a pitcher, and he's going to be a starter, and he's done so much in this league. He has earned the right, almost as if you're Derek Jeter as a shortstop, right? Towards his later years, hey, he might not be what he once was as a starter, but he's done so much. We're not just going to pull him. He can pull himself if he wants, but he is a starter, right? That's one way it could go. It also could go the way of, do you start doing relief a little bit, a la be a closer or something like that? Or the third way, which I don't think it would be just a full-on stop. I don't think it would be a stop. I think it would be, all right, you're just going to ride it till the wheels fall off. I don't think he would stop while still somewhat young, I guess is what I'm saying. So he's not going to stop somewhat young. He's either going to ride it till the wheels fall off or turn into a closer. And I think he's earned the right to make that decision. And anybody that signs him would have to understand that going into it.
And you think that it would be his call at that point?
I think so.
It would be. And you mentioned Derek Jeter, which I think is an interesting comp because I'm looking at his game log right now. And for the first 8 seasons of his pro career, only a shortstop.
Right.
Then he DH'd once, and then once again, and then 5 times, then twice, then 5, then 5, then 10. By the time he got to be 38, he DH'd 25 times, then 4 times as a 39-year-old, and then 15 times. So they started to give him a little bit more of a DH role. For Shohei Ohtani, and I'm looking at the stats right now where he sits, he is 33rd in baseball in innings pitched. He's thrown 124 and 2/3 innings in 21 starts, which is just about a full turn.
Right.
It's a full turn light because he only goes every 6 days, not every 5 days. So you feel like that whatever team gets him would have to completely defer to what he wants to do.
Exactly. And I did a week with Willard a couple weeks back, and we did a lot of Ohtani talk, and we had a lot of people on talking about what Ohtani would want, and that was huge to him, the 6-man rotation. So everybody that's in the mix right now for Ohtani, they know at the very least they're going to have to do that, right? So they know that they're going to have to do that. But then on top of that, then it becomes what else he wants. He's got to have full control of whatever he wants. That's why when you look at who is available, we'll get into this a little bit later, when you look at the teams that you might see him with, I mean, you would think in theory everybody would do what he wants, but the Dodgers, who knows? You know, the Yankees, they want everybody to fall in line. So that's why it might be somebody off that beaten path of the typical suspects in terms of landing him as a big free agent. But look, he's going to be able to do what he wants. It's his choice. And anybody that is lucky enough to have him, to me, Dibs, by the time it's time for Shohei to have a conversation about the pitching aspect, hopefully you got a couple World Series. Hopefully.
Right.
That's what you're hoping.
Well, if you're looking at a 10-year deal, and right now Shohei Ohtani is 28 years old, so a 10-year deal, how far into that deal would you honestly look at it and think, you know what, you might be better off to not pitch every 6th day, and right now he sits 30th in MLB in at-bats. He's 33rd in innings pitched, and he's 30th in at-bats. So that's a lot of wear and tear on one individual because he plays, when he pitches, obviously he hits because you got to have him in the lineup, but he's playing 6 of every 7 games, and he's pitching the other day, and he's also hitting that day. So at what point do you look at him and say, your most productivity will come from you maybe not being a starter? Maybe you turn him into like an innings eater or a closer.
Yeah. Well, it would have to be closer. I mean, I don't think you can disrespect him being a middle reliever.
Ross Stripling?
Yeah, I don't think he...
Give him the Stripling role?
I don't think he can do all that.
Mania?
Well, and let's think about it like this. When he's hitting, it's not as if he's he is a power guy, but he's not just there to hit home runs and jog and trot, and that guy runs.
Yeah.
That guy runs like a deer, right? I mean, you had Luis Matos. Some people were giving Luis Matos grief for how he fielded that ball in center field because Shohei got the double out of it. So not only is it just wear and tear, the fact that he is swinging the bat and the fact that he is pitching the baseball, he gets on the base pass and he wants to make it hurt, right? He's stealing bases. He's taking extra bases. So in every facet of the game, and that's what they say, Dibs, jack of all trades, master of none. Shohei is not that. He's basically a master of all, but the question is, for how long can you sustain that?
Right. Especially when you're pitching, and pitching requires so much leg movement and so much leg strength. And I wonder if that doesn't sap his ability as a hitter. He is 38th in Major League Baseball in stolen bases. He's got 15 steals. So to your point, he's more than just a power bat. He leads baseball in OPS. He leads in slugging. He leads in OBP. He leads in home runs. I believe he's second or third in runs batted in. He's fourth, actually, behind Olson, Garcia, and Pete Alonso with 82 runs batted in. So I wonder how much the new team, his next team, will try to balance those factors because, yeah, he's a good pitcher. He might be a great pitcher, but for how much longer? He's an unbelievable hitter. He's the best hitter in the game, and he's probably the, 20th best pitcher, 16th best pitcher, 24th best pitcher, depending on what you look at in terms of the metrics. So how long do you feel like he can sustain both while still being that real threat as a hitter, because that's his difference maker?
Yeah, and I do feel that Shohei has turned it up a notch pitching-wise. A couple years ago, a lot of people would say, well, hitting-wise, he's elite, but we really just like Shohei because he's doing both, but he's not necessarily pitching at an elite level. Well, that's not the case anymore. So when it comes time to have the conversation about Shohei as a pitcher and at what point will that conversation come up with the team, really the conversation, I think if he ends up getting tattooed, then it's a very easy conversation. I think the conversation gets sticky if he's just average, right? Average, maybe below average, not what he is right now as a pitcher, but not terrible. Then you have to have the conversation, hey, Shohei, we know you can still pitch, but do we honestly think that it's helping the team the way that it used to? And I think Shohei, being as competitive as he is,
right,
he might, feel like I can turn it up. But maybe on the other hand, he might just feel like, I get it. I had a good run. I just want to help the team. Maybe we mess around and try some closer stuff. But yeah, sure. Me continuing to be a starting pitcher, I'm not putting up the numbers that I once was, but I can still hit the ball a long ways. Let's do that. So it might take care of itself.
Right.
The question is going to be if it's that middle ground where you're better than a good group of pitchers, but you're not elite anymore.
Right now, it's not that middle ground. Right now, he's still in that elite zone. I'm looking at strikeouts per 9. He's fourth in baseball behind Strider, former Giant Kevin Gausman, who, my partner admits that might be the one that got away.
Yeah.
And Blake Snell of the Padres. Shohei is striking out 11.6 per 9. In terms of whip, walks plus hits divided by innings pitched, he's 8th among qualifying pitchers, and in ERA, he's 14th. So he's right behind Alex Cobb in the ERA, right ahead of Logan Webb. So among starting pitchers, he still is in that elite group in terms of those metrics. I'm just thinking about the future of Shohei Ohtani. So you sign him to a 10-year deal, and I don't know if you can expect him to be a starter and a slugger for 10 years. So how might that work in terms of slowly moving him toward a different spot if he still wants to pitch?
Well, first of all, you don't tell him that. You tell him you can pitch for as long as you want.
Forever.
But realistically, I'm looking at that 5-year mark and thinking, all right, maybe at the again, if he's still pitching at an elite level, sure, why not? But if that's not the case, then it's a conversation between Shohei and the team to say, are you gonna make us? Now, here's the difference between Shohei and Derek Jeter. Now, Derek Jeter only played one side, right? He's not pitching. He's playing shortstop. So it's a lot harder. I guess it's a lot harder to tell Derek Jeter to move from shortstop because that's all he's got than it would be to say, Shohei, why don't we put you at first base or something? Or we can start you trying to close you to just save those innings. And if that doesn't work out, we can go to first base. With Derek Jeter, it's such an obvious thing where and really, you talk about, yesterday we talked about positionless football. It's a lot of positionless baseball too. I mean, they're only premium positions right now if you have premium players. It used to be your best person, like Little League. Your best player is in center field. Your best player is at shortstop. Now it's, hey, that's a premium position because we have an elite shortstop. But we can put somebody else there if we need to. So even though that's changed a bit because it was Derek Jeter and that was his spot, that was his home, you felt like you couldn't move him. With Shohei, you still have hitting. We can still put you in the field somewhere if we really wanted to, but he might not look at it that way.
Yeah, exactly. It's 888-957-9570. We're talking about Shohei Ohtani and a possible Giants fit. How long would you want Shohei to still be a starting pitcher? And the question I have for you, Alan, and for the listeners as well, how big is this series? And we saw it last night. How much of a condemnation sensation is that for the Angels, knowing the way you lost that game? Because Ohtani came in, he did his part, he had a couple of hits, he had a walk, and the Angels were in a spot to win that game. And instead, you completely fall apart. Randall Grichuk, Grandy, you're missing out on a cha-ching, but that's okay. You'll get me, I'm sure, on the other side. But the Angels lose that game, and they find their way now to being 8 games out in the wild card. How big are these games for the Angels in terms of Shohei Ohtani?
It's over.
It's already over.
It's over.
It's over.
What are we talking about?
Was last night the final nail? Was it the straw that broke the camel's back?
I feel that we keep saying that with the Angels. It's just bad loss after bad loss after bad loss. And not just that. On the call, it was, you can hear the Giants fans now. Dibs, I could hear the Giants fans all night. I could hear the Giants fans all night. When the walk happened in the 9th inning, you could hear the Giants fans all night. So I know Shohei likes the West Coast, and I know the weather is beautiful down there, but there's just no way. And sure, they have Mike Trout, he's starting to get close to that.
Do they have Mike Trout?
He's starting to get close to that. Are you starting to be injury prone? What's going on there?
Seriously.
Right? He's missing a lot of games. There's no way, if he wants to be competitive, and I believe that the Angels have had a little bit of bad luck because they've tried to make moves, but if he truly wants to be competitive, I just don't see any way that he stays with the Angels. I don't see it. And it doesn't matter. They could win this series. They can do whatever they need to do. But unless they go to the playoff, unless they make the playoffs, so I won't say no way. If they make the playoffs, he probably stays. But there's also no way they're making the playoffs.
Right. I mean, they're 48 games away from the end of the road in this season. They're 8 back of the wild card. And you look at the American League wild card, and you've got Tampa, a team playing 600 ball. They're 3 games back of Baltimore. Tampa Bay was the best team in baseball through May, and they're still a very good team. You've got Toronto playing 561 ball. They're right there. And then you've got a slew of teams chasing Houston, which has a half-game lead over Seattle, 3 back, Boston, 5 back, the Yankees, 5.5 back. Then you get to the Angels, who are 8 back. They've lost 7 in a row. They're 2-8 in their last 10. So if you're Shohei Ohtani and you're sitting at the deadline and you see the upgrades that they made or they tried to make, including Randall Grichuk, who made the big, I guess it wasn't an error because he never touched the ball, but he got eaten by the turf monster out there in left field.
It was a tweener. I got love for outfielders, but yeah, that was a rough
I get that. And you're a former left fielder. You played D1 at Temple. And
it's still rough. It's still a rough go.
Right. And you get to that spot, and I guess you can speak to it more than I can as a perennial right fielder and a second baseman.
There you go.
And, I mean, they put me there because they had to play me somewhere.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I found my way to the tennis court. Exactly. Well, A.J. Pollock's error was, I don't even know if that was an error either, but it's one of those spots where you either go for it full out. So if Grichuk dives for that ball and doesn't get it, you can at least say, all right, bad choice, but you went all out. Mm-hmm. What he did was the cardinal sin of baseball, where you go hard and then you pull up and then you maybe and then yes and then no.
Yeah.
And then you fall down and you turf monster. That has to be like an outfielder's nightmare.
No, yeah, he had to make a decision, and he didn't. Pollock, he just broke the wrong way. And here's the thing about Pollock. And if we're talking about which one was more egregious, it would be Grichuk to me than Pollock. Because Pollock, I think he also needed a good jump. I think there's also a possibility, even if he doesn't come in, who knows if he gets that baseball. So I think both were tough. But I would give Pollock a smidge more grace, but they both look terrible. Absolutely terrible.
And I appreciate you using the phrase grace because, a little bit of grace, it's very, very religious of you. It's a very Catholic thing. I'm sure other religions, too, you give grace, and it's big of you to give that level of grace to an outfielder who makes an error. Not an error. Didn't go down as an error. Matos was credited with the only error in the ball game, but how big was that for the Giants in terms of that win, to pull that one, to rescue a victory from the jaws of defeat in that fashion? How big was that?
Well, big enough that they felt like they should throw Camilo Duvall out there.
Right, with a 5-run lead.
With a 5-1 lead.
Because, they feel like they couldn't have closed it out if they didn't use the best closer in the National League.
Better safe than sorry, Dibs. Better safe than sorry. But it is a big deal for the Giants, and the reason you look at it differently is because they did just lose to the A's. So any given Sunday or any given Monday or Tuesday, you got to get W's when you can. So I'm not going to downplay the fact that they got the W, but the Giants can beat the Angels for the rest of the series, and I'm not gonna be convinced that it's time for the World Series now. And we already know who's coming up next, so it's about stacking wins as much as it is of just beating a team that you're better than. You're just better than the Angels.
It's a gauntlet, absolutely, in terms of the Giants and who they have, including, and I'm going to borrow from Mark, and Rangers, because Mark does an unbelievable boaching with the grumble and the groans.
I mean, I hear you.
No,
you had to make an attempt.
Right.
I have to, in honor of being in the seat, and Mark Willard will be back on Monday.
E for effort.
Yeah.
Alan, you clowned him. Let's hear yours.
NT for nice try. No, he didn't clown me.
Why is everyone trying to rile me up today?
No, it's Lucas, and quite frankly,
it was you first.
You can't do that.
Get him, Alan. Yeah.
Okay, Lucas,
you
and I off air are going to have a conversation about many things, but I am trying to rile up you and Evan because I think it's a real 30-something rivalry.
He's not even 30 yet.
Whatever, he's an old soul. Honestly,
that I do agree with.
He walks around like he's 47 years old.
That I do agree with.
Yeah. I mean, in Grandy, I give you the same sort of credit. Like Lucas and Grandy and Evan are all about the same age. Lucas is a little bit older, but Lucas is like a high school sophomore.
Evan mistook Fleetwood Mac for the Beatles. Old soul? I don't know.
Fair point. It's a fair point.
But he would probably know old school hip hop, though. That's his
Shout
thing,
out El Cerrito and the EC. You zygotes have no idea in terms of music. And I would say this to anybody on the station in terms of music across all genres, none of you can touch the Dibber in terms of all genres.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, and it just, a guy being around as long as I have. Like Steiny's a little bit older than me. And
I love the young people.
Now is not the time for that, Grandy. I was on a little bit of a roll there. I didn't need to be derailed with your personal attacks. But I don't love the young people. Actually, I am relying on them more and more with an 11-month-old baby, the young people.
Here, I got one for you.
Talk to me.
He's a competitor. How was that?
That's not bad. I'll give you a 2. Yeah, Grandy's also giving you a 2. It's tough when, like Mark Willard, my partner, my normal partner, he and I will be back together, I guess August 21st when I come back and he comes back. He's got like 4 or 5 voices that he does that are without comparison. He does Bochy, he does Kapler, he does, a wide variety.
Can I say something, though? And I love Willard.
Shoot your shot.
Bochy and Kapler, both of those impressions, they're not similar.